I'm the first doctor in my family. Stay late after school to get help from teachers, hours and hours, 11 A stars, work experience, 3 A stars, volunteering. I really was nervous. I really thought I was going to throw up. Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm a 24-year-old resident doctor working in the UK. I graduated as a doctor back in 2023. Today I'm here to break down my whole journey, right from the very first moment I thought about doing medicine up until working as a doctor today. Just as a bit of background, if it's comforting to anybody out there, because I remember finding comfort in hearing a similar thing way back when I first started this journey. I am the first doctor in my family. I have always gone to state school, and I'm from an area that classes as quite a deprived area where not a lot of people go on to become doctors, which I guess means I don't fit the typical criteria of someone who goes into medicine. And I absolutely do recognise and appreciate all of the privileges that I do have, but there were some extra hurdles along the way, and I am proud of myself for that. But if you are someone who's in a similar position to any of that, then this is just your message that you absolutely can do it. So let's go right back to when I was 5 years old, and my granddad, who I'm super close to, asked me the typical question of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I do feel like I can kind of remember the actual moment, but I also might just remember it based on the story that people have told me back. But when he asked me, I said I want to be a paediatrician. Actually, no, Grandad, I want to be a famous paediatrician. I don't know where I ever got that term from. Like I said, no one else in my family is a doctor, and I don't think anyone had specifically put that term in my head, but obviously I must have got it from somewhere. The fact that I said I wanted to be a famous paediatrician, again, so random, but I guess I was just meaning that I wanted to be known for what I do, and I guess that still stands. Of course, I was very young when I first said this, and I'm not going to pretend that that's where my lifelong commitment to medicine started. Like most children, I went through a lot of ideas of different jobs I wanted to do, but I did always go back to the idea of medicine. Even now, working as a doctor and going through and considering different specialities, paediatrics has always stayed at my number one. I went through primary and high school, and I guess you could say I was always pretty academic. But when it got to about mid-high school, there was a point where I had to start working harder to get the grades that I wanted, particularly in subjects like maths and physics. I wasn't one of those children that it just came supernaturally to. I used to stay late after school to get help from teachers. I used to go home and watch YouTube videos, and I did really have to put in the effort. There's one specific moment that I do remember when something kind of just clicked in me. It kind of clicked that I definitely wanted to be a doctor, and that if that's really what I wanted, then I needed to knuckle down. It was October half term of my first year of GCSEs, which I think makes me 14 or 15. I vividly remember I was sat on my bedroom floor and I had different folders out around me. And there was a moment where I felt a bit overwhelmed about the amount of content I was going to have to learn and the work I was going to have to do. That day I spent hours and hours making mind maps and summary sheets with all of my coloured pens all around me, and that was probably one of the longest, if not the longest, study revision day that I ever did. I do remember afterwards having such a feeling of satisfaction and kind of a sense of, I can do this. And I guess perhaps that's where my love for studying and working to become a doctor started. I know it probably seems strange to have such a specific moment where things clicked, and from that moment then I did just become more consistent, and that's kind of where it all started. Fast forward those high school years and my GCSEs, I ended up getting 11 A stars and 1 A. The university application process started whilst I was in sixth form, so alongside grinding for exams, I started building my med school application. One of my closest friends in sixth form, who I'm still super close with now, was also applying for medical school, and we were the only two in our sixth form who were going down that path. We went to open days together, did our revision and interview practice together, and just kind of supported each other along the way, and it was really nice to have someone not only for that support, but also who understood the process as we were going through. The application to medical school does require you to have quite a lot of evidence that you have the right skills and qualities that the universities are after. Initially, it can seem a bit like a tick box exercise, but reflecting back, all of the things that they're looking for not only help you grow as a person, but also do really give you an insight into a career in medicine. And a lot of it is to help you make sure that that is the right career for you, alongside building skills that are going to be useful in the future. The first thing is work experience, which really is one of the biggest things to help you confirm if you want to do medicine or not. On work experience, you get to see the day-to-day lives of juniors and consultants and just how things work in a hospital. For me, that was confirmation that medicine was definitely what I wanted to do. I did quite a bit of work experience, but depending on different universities, it's often not mandatory to have a large amount. The most important thing is just having experiences that you can reflect on. To get my work experience, I just googled the name of my local hospital and work experience and found an email address of someone who helped me arrange it all. I did a week in paediatrics, so children's medicine, a week in geriatrics, so care of the elderly medicine, and 1 week in acute medicine. And separate to the hospital, I also did 3 days in a GP practice, which was a nice variation. To build my application, I also did volunteering. I volunteered 1 evening a week in a care home and did that for, I think, just short of a year. I also volunteered in children's swimming classes. That was actually at the swim club that I had always been to since I was very little, and I had a good relationship with the teacher, so we arranged for me to go and volunteer in the classes, of course having all the necessary checks and things that I needed, and I really did enjoy that. Honestly, if I wasn't on a busy doctor rota and had a lot more free time than I do now, that is actually something that I would consider doing again. It's basically just showing that you're a well-rounded person with the skills necessary to go into medicine and become a doctor, and showing your commitment to what it is that you want to do. Apologies if you can hear this drilling outside. I've just noticed it now, but I really hope it's not been going on for the whole video. I really don't know if it's going to stop or if I should just carry on. Okay, it's about 10 minutes later and it's stopped, so hopefully they hold off their drilling until I finish filming this video. Then a bit later came the interviews, which I was pretty terrified for beforehand. I remember a specific experience of going down to Cardiff for my med school interview with my granddad. We were in Wetherspoons to have breakfast before my interview, and I felt physically sick. I really thought I was going to throw up, and I couldn't eat any breakfast, which then probably just made me feel more sick. Looking back, I was so young and I'd never done interviews before. I had no experience that was even vaguely similar, but the actual experiences of the interviews really weren't that bad. In general, everyone was really welcoming, really supportive, kind of before, during and after the interview. Yeah, it was definitely something that I built up in my head. If anyone's going through that or has that coming up and feels the same way, then you're definitely not the only one, and I promise it's not as bad as it seems. And after the interviews came the inevitable waiting game. So applications had been submitted, and then gradually the offers came through. They were all conditional offers, so essentially offers dependent on the grades that I got in my A-levels, and all of my offers were to get a minimum of 3 A's. I did grind pretty hard for my A-levels, being that student that was sat in the library revising when everyone else was in the common room, but it did pay off and I got 3 A stars in my A-levels. I had a long summer before starting university, and then in the autumn of 2018 I packed up my suitcase and moved to uni to start my med school journey. Being an only child from a single parent family has meant that me and my mum are super close, and she came down with me when I first moved into uni, and I remember her waving me off after she just dropped me at my accommodation, and it was sad. But I did settle in really well. I made great friends really quickly, and I still spoke to my mum on the phone all the time. I will do some more in-depth videos of my university journey in general. I am so grateful that I had such an amazing time at uni, and they really are 5 years that I will never forget. The first few years at uni were very content and lecture based, and about halfway through the course we did our dissertation, which meant that we got an extra degree within the 5-year course. Nottingham is one of the few unis that offer that actually within the 5-year course. I guess that was a benefit to going to Nottingham, but it did also mean that we had shorter holidays than the average med school. So I did all of that and I graduated with my first degree, which was a BMed-Sci degree. My graduation was a bit delayed because of COVID, but it was worth the wait. And after doing my dissertation, it was time to start clinical years of medical school. That was another jump up and something that I was nervous to transition into. Again, another specific memory. I feel like this video is just me going down memory lane. I remember it was my first day of clinical placement, and from 3rd year we actually had like a placement buddy, So me and my best friend actually like buddied up, which would mean we would be on placement together for the first rotation. But our first days were on different days. So I was going in on my own on my first day, and the day before I actually did like a trial run to go and find out whereabouts the ward was that I needed to be the next day. I timed it to make sure I was going to be there on time. I really planned it out. I really was nervous. Obviously now there was nothing to be nervous about, but as someone who's never had the experience before, it was just a bit scary. And whether or not that is a very normal experience or if I was just extra nervous, I don't know. But again, if anyone else feels like that, you're definitely not the only one. So the placements in general, you move around different hospitals within the region. So throughout my clinical years of medical school, I had placements in different hospitals in Nottingham, Derby, Mansfield, Boston and Lincoln, which were all in about a 2-hour radius from my student house in Nottingham, which did pose some challenges as a student without a car, but it did work out and people were always so lovely with giving lifts. Some of the placements you had to move away for and live in hospital accommodation, but generally you were with another group of people from your uni, and that was quite nice. Even if you didn't know the people before or they weren't necessarily your close friends, being away on placement with them for 6 weeks or 8 weeks did mean you all kind of formed a bit of a bond, so it was a nice place to make new friends as well. Yeah, and although it was difficult sometimes moving around, I do look back fondly at least most of the experiences that I had away on placement. Day to day you'd be on the wards or in clinics and theatres, but you still had a list of learning objectives and things you needed to get through for exams. So it was pretty intense. You generally do like long hours on placement, and most days I would come back and I'd study and revise. It was busy. It just kind of became the lifestyle, the normal. And to be honest, looking back at what I used to do, I'm impressed with my previous self. But it just kind of became what you do, and yeah, I just learned to find my own balance and get through. Over the course of med school, there were a countless number of exams, including written exams and also what's known as OSCEs, which are like physical in-person exams with either actors, simulated patients or mannequins, where you were assessed on different things like clinical skills like bloods, cannulas and other procedures, taking a history and examining patients, and also general communication skills like breaking bad news. There would be at least one examiner sat in the room marking you, which again was quite daunting in the beginning, but just kind of became the norm as we went throughout med school. But that's not to say I wasn't still terrified before my OSCE for my med school final. Skipping forward to fourth year of medical school was the time I started applying for jobs. So there is a countrywide system where every medical student ranks their preference of jobs by location and the jobs themselves, for example in different specialties. When I applied, the ranking and if you got your preference of jobs all depended on how well you'd done in exams. So that was both your medical school exams and an exam called the SJT, which was the situational judgment test. I won't go into that because that's all been scrapped now, and it's now a random allocation process, which is a conversation for another day. I won't go off on a big tangent there. I wanted to come back home to live with my partner after doing years of long distance and to have my family nearby too. I did get my first choice location and choice of jobs. At the end of med school, I got a letter with all of my achievements on and was told that I managed to rank in first decile, which means in the top 10%. In every exam I did during medical school, apart from one where I think I came in second decile. And I've touched upon this in my intro video, that grades and rankings absolutely onto everything, but that is something I worked hard for and to do well in my exams, so it is an achievement that I've taken away with me. And then I had my last long summer before it was time to enter into work in the NHS. I did my first year as a Foundation Year 1 doctor and I'm now working as a Foundation Year 2 doctor. And that's where I'm at. Even just talking about it all to make this video really does bring it all back. Although there were times where it was definitely not easy and it was a lot of hard work, I look back on everything so fondly. I had the best experiences at uni and have achieved so many things that I've come away and I'm proud of myself for. The million-dollar question is, would I do it all again? The answer is yes, I would. If you've made it to the end of this video, then thank you so much. I know parts of it were rambly and kind of just me going down memory lane, but I just wanted to do an overview of my journey. In upcoming videos, I will have more specific tips and advice for succeeding at different parts along the journey. If this video was useful or you just enjoyed listening to all of my ramblings, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!